Have you ever wondered why some of the motivational techniques that other people swear by seem to have absolutely no power at all when it comes to keeping your own progress on track? Now, of course, it makes total sense that different people are going to be motivated by different things, but what I kind of just realized, which seems like kind of a no brainer at first, is that it's not necessarily what people are motivated by, the what, but more about the how people are motivated. And again, it kind of seems like a bit of a no brainer, but I guess I just hadn't really thought too deeply about that part of it before. Now, I don't know about you, but I love a good personality test, and I recently did one that led to a bit of an aha moment around this whole idea of motivation, and it's definitely going to inform how I talk about motivation moving forward, especially when I get asked about how to hold on to motivation, which is a lot. It's one of the most common questions that I get asked from members of my audience. So let's go ahead and dive in. First off, if you're new here, my name is Rachel Harrison Sund, and I help people to generate passive income selling journals, planners, notebooks, and more on the Kindle Direct publishing platform. Now, if that sounds like something interesting to you, then be sure to subscribe to my channel and don't forget to hit the bell so you can be notified each and every time I put out one of these videos, which is every single Monday. So like I said, I had a little bit of a light bulb moment a couple of weeks ago. Now, I'm part of Rachel Rogers' monthly membership program, which is called We Should All Be Millionaires, the club. And within that community, they do weekly money mindset coaching run by this amazing coach named Natalie Miller. And in one of those sessions, Natalie introduced us to the concept of the four tendencies. Now, the four tendencies is a framework devised by New York Times bestselling author Gretchen Rubin. And the whole notion behind the four tendencies is basically to determine why we act and why we don't act. So the main question it seeks to answer here is, how do I respond to expectations? And she talks about how there are two types of expectations. There are inner expectations and outer expectations. So an outer expectation might be something like a work deadline or a request from a friend. And an inner expectation is something like your own desire to get into shape or start learning how to play the piano or to start that new business. And Gretchen talks about how there are generally four categories when it comes to, these four tendencies that people tend to fall into with regard to how we deal with and manage inner and outer expectations. So here are the four tendencies. First and most popular is called the obliger. And the obliger tends to meet outer expectations, but resist inner expectations. Then we've got the questioner, which is the second largest group of people. And questioners tend to resist outer expectations, but they meet inner expectations. Then we've got the upholder, who meets outer expectations and meets inner expectations. And then lastly, we have got the rebel. Now, the rebel tends to resist outer expectations and inner expectations alike. Now, knowing how we respond to both inner and outer expectations, so knowing which of these four tendencies we fall into, can be really useful. It can allow us to approach the concept of motivation in a way that actually allows us to follow through on what we say we're going to do and ultimately to reach those big goals that we're setting for ourselves. Now, before we dive into further detail about all of these four different tendencies, just from the outset, do any of these resonate with you? Can you kind of already guess which one of these tendencies you might fall into? If so, let me know in the comments below. Now, the first tendency is the obliger. And like I said, most people tend to fall into this category. And they have no problem meeting outer expectations, but they tend to struggle quite a bit with meeting inner expectations. So the classic example of this is an obliger starting a fitness routine. Now, if they decide that they're going to get up every morning at 6 a.m. and go for a run by themselves, this is probably going to be a very big challenge for the obliger, and it's probably not something that they're going to be able to stick with and form a concrete habit around. Now, if you tell the obliger that they are going to meet a fitness buddy, a friend down at the gym at 6 o'clock every morning, if they've got that other person waiting for them at the gym, this is what's really going to motivate them to get out of bed and get to the gym at 6 o'clock. They are not going to want to let that person down. So if they've got that fitness accountability partner waiting for them, then, they're not going to end up missing a day. And this is a habit that they're going to be able to stick to and have success with. Now, one of the cool things about all of these different 4 tendencies is they each have their own little motto that goes along with it. And the one for the obliger is, "You can count on me, and I am counting on you to count on me." Okay, the second group, and again, this makes up the second largest group of people, is the obliger. And this is the tendency that I definitely fall into. This suits me to a total T. Now, questioners rather, they question all expectations. And they have a really difficult time meeting outer expectations, but no problem whatsoever meeting inner expectations. Now, basically, what this comes down to is a questioner will do something only if it makes sense to them. Questioners love information, they love research, they love knowledge, and they will use those things, all of those tools, to base all of their decisions on. So, like I said, if something makes sense for them to do, they will do it. And if it doesn't make sense, or if it feels like an arbitrary obligation or something that's irrational, then they will have a very, very hard time wanting to put any energy behind that. Now, this is part of that light bulb moment I had when learning about the questioner. This is why, for me, having a personal why is such a strong motivator. And that, after going through all this, makes so much sense. If I've got a strong reason for something, then I seem to have no problem maintaining my motivation. And I've talked about this quite a bit in my group. If you want to check out my video on finding your why, if you think you're a questioner, then you should definitely check out that video. That talks all about that and how finding your why can be such a strong motivator. And of course, after learning about all of this, I'm seeing how, even though that's such a strong motivator for me, it might not actually be that effective for some people that fall into these other 3 tendencies. So that was kind of a really interesting point of learning for me throughout this whole thing. So one of the downsides of being a questioner is because we love taking in all of this information and facts and research, this can oftentimes lead to analysis paralysis. We don't want to make a final decision on anything until we feel like we have all the information required to make the best decision possible. So we have to really be careful that we don't get stuck in that position of analysis paralysis. And we'll talk in a couple of minutes about how each of these 4 tendencies can get around some of the weaknesses of these tendencies. But that's definitely something that questioners need to watch out for, is that analysis paralysis. So the motto for the questioner is, "Tell me why, and I will comply." So the third group, and this represents a much smaller portion of the overall population, is the upholder. And the upholder doesn't seem to have problems meeting outer or inner expectations. So they want to meet the expectations of others, but they believe that the expectations of themselves are just as important as meeting the expectations of others. So they really want to avoid letting other people down, but they want to avoid letting themselves down as well. So upholders tend to be self-reliant, they're self-starters, they're very good at executing. But the downside here, and as we're seeing all of these different tendencies do have a downside, is that upholders can sometimes be rigid because they are always trying to meet all of those expectations. So they can tend to be a little bit inflexible. They can also want to meet expectations that don't even really make sense, just because they feel compelled to follow the rules and meet those expectations. So sometimes they can get bogged down in tasks that, ultimately as part of the big picture aren't necessarily going to move them forward, but they just feel compelled to meet the expectations, even if they don't really make sense. Now, the motto for the upholder is, "Discipline is my freedom." Okay, The final one, and also a smaller portion of the general population, is the rebel. And the rebel tends to resist expectations, both outer and inner. So they really don't want to do anything that they are asked to do and or expected to do, and they don't even like to put expectations on themselves. They tend to want to just act out of spontaneity. They don't like schedules and rules, and they kind of just want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And the motto here, which I love, is "You can't make me, and neither can I." Okay, so the question here obviously is, how do you work within your own tendency in order to motivate yourself? So with the case of the obliger, this is all about setting up systems of accountability around yourself. So you might want to look at it in terms of taking your inner expectations and converting them into outer expectations. And that's what that system of accountability is that I'm talking about. So you might want to join a club, join some sort of special interest group, team up with a friend, get some sort of accountability partner. You might also, this was a suggestion I saw in Gretchen's report of all of these different tendencies, to look at yourself as a role model for other people. That can be a powerful way to motivate yourself as well. That's also creating a bit of a system of accountability. So those are the things that you can do as an obliger to motivate yourself. Now, when it comes to the questioner, again, like I said, questioners tend to get stuck in analysis paralysis sometimes. They can find it difficult to make a decision because we like to keep wanting more and more information to try and base a decision around. So what you can do here to kind of work around that is to give yourself some strict deadlines that you're working towards so that you know, okay, come this date, this is when I'm going to act. You could also seek some advice from a trusted mentor or a trusted friend that you respect. That can be a way to kind of get unstuck as well. And like I talked about earlier, having a very strong personal why. And again, I've linked to that video I did all about finding your why down in the description below. But for me, this is one of my most motivating kind of motivational hacks that I have, is just knowing exactly why I'm doing something. If it makes sense, if there's a strong reason why, I tend to have no problem following through. So that's another piece of advice that I would give to questioners as well. Now for the upholder, you're kind of in a small minority here, but you are really, really good at forming new habits. So this, sticking to what you say you're going to do and motivation, all that, it tends to come a little bit easier to you than it does for the other groups. But something you might want to look at is just creating schedules to help get things done. Upholders love things like schedules, charts to track progress. That can be really motivating for an upholder as well. So any sort of metrics like that. Like I said, charts, schedules, seeing your progress on a chart can be very, very motivating for you. And then just, like I said, getting that schedule set up and ticking things off your to-do list, that can be really, really motivating for an upholder. Okay, finally, we've got the rebel, that person who resists all expectations, whether they're inner or outer. So for rebels, it can be really, really difficult to form habits because rebels really want to be spontaneous. They don't like rules. They don't like schedules. They don't like anything that feels like an obligation, like something that is an I have to do or I should do. That really doesn't resonate with the rebels. So the trick here is, rather than focusing on expectations, think more about choice and the why. So, just consider the fact that you're not obliged to do anything that you don't want to do, but recognize that every choice that you're making comes with a positive, a negative, or a neutral consequence. So it's helpful here to look at all of your options, whatever it is that you want to get done. I can either do this or I don't have to do it. But just look at all of your options and think about what will or won't happen when it comes to each option. So get all that information that you can. And then you can feel like you're making that decision based on your own personal choice and freedom, not because someone else expects you to do it or not because even you expect yourself to do it. It's because you are making that choice out of your own personal freedom, after having looked at all of the available information and determining that that is actually what you want to do. So that should be helpful for any of you rebels out there. Okay, so that was the basic overview of the 4 tendencies and how each of them relate to motivation and how we can use it to boost motivation for ourselves depending on which of the 4 tendencies that we fall into. Now, if you want to learn more about this or, find out which of the 4 tendencies that you fall into, then I suggest going down to the description below. I've left a link to the book, The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, but also to an online quiz that just takes about 10 minutes. It's totally free. I love personality tests, so I found it really fun and very illuminating. So definitely check that out if this has you interested in figuring out which of the 4 tendencies that you belong to. All right, once again, thanks so much for watching. And if you want to learn more about how you can generate passive income selling journals, planners, notebooks, and more on the Kindle Direct Publishing platform, then be sure to download my free guide, 3 Steps to Publishing Your First Low Content Book in Less Than a Day. I've left a link to that in the description below. And if you want to join a group of fellow low content publishers all on their journey toward creating passive income, then be sure to join my free Facebook group, Low Content Profits, which I have also linked to in the description below as well. Now, if you're looking for more mindset-related videos, be sure to check out these videos next. And if you liked this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks.